It was another long evening in the small restaurant near the old business district. The lights were warm but weak, and the air smelled of oil, coffee, and tired people. The waitress moved from table to table with practiced steps. Her shoes were worn out, and her back hurt, but her face stayed calm. She had learned to hide her pain. Every shift was the same. Long hours, low pay, and customers who rarely looked at her eyes. She had grown used to being invisible. Most people saw only the tray in her hands, not the person carrying it. Still, she did her work carefully. She believed that even small jobs deserved respect. Tonight, she needed every tip she could get. Rent was late, and the fridge at home was almost empty. The restaurant was half full when a man walked in alone. He wore a clean but simple suit, dark and neatly pressed. He did not look flashy, yet something about him felt heavy, serious. He chose a table in the corner, away from the noise. He sat slowly, as if his body resisted every movement. The waitress noticed him right away, not because of his clothes, but because of his face. It looked pale, and his hand shook slightly as he picked up the menu. She greeted him with a soft voice and poured water into his glass. He nodded but did not smile. His eyes looked distant, like he was somewhere else. He ordered little food, just soup and tea. That alone felt strange. Most men his age ordered heavy meals. When the food arrived, he barely touched it. He lifted the spoon, then put it down. Sweat formed on his forehead. Even though the room was cool, the waitress passed his table again and again. Each time, something felt wrong. His breathing looked uneven. His hand pressed against his chest for a brief moment, then dropped back to the table. Other staff were busy arguing near the counter. Customers laughed. Phones rang. Dishes clattered. No one else seemed to notice. She stopped at the drink station and looked back at him. A thought crossed her mind. Maybe he was just tired. Maybe it was none of her business. She had been warned before about bothering customers too much. Complaints could cost her job, and she could not afford to lose it. Still, her feet moved before her fear could stop them. She walked back to his table and asked gently if everything was okay. Her voice was polite, calm, the same voice she always used. He tried to answer, but the words did not come out right. His lips trembled. His spoon slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a sharp sound. For a second, everything froze. Then his body leaned forward and he collapsed onto the table. Someone shouted. A chair fell over. The room filled with panic. People stood up, stepping back. Some pulled out their phones. Others just stared, unsure what to do. The waitress did not freeze. She rushed to his side, her heart racing. She had no medical training, no special skills, but she knew this was serious. She shouted for someone to call emergency services. Her voice was louder than she thought it could be. The man struggled to breathe. His eyes were half open, full of fear. She held his shoulders and guided him gently to the floor so he would not fall hard. She spoke to him, telling him to stay awake, to listen to her voice. She did not know if it helped, but she refused to be silent. Her hands shook as she checked his breathing the best she could. She remembered something she once saw on a public safety poster. She tried to keep him on his side. She loosened his tie. She kept talking, even when her voice cracked. Minutes felt like hours. The restaurant manager finally pushed through the crowd, angry and confused. But when he saw the man on the floor, his face changed. He backed away and told everyone to move aside. The sound of sirens cut through the noise outside. Paramedics rushed in with equipment and calm voices. They took control quickly. The waitress stepped back, her hands now cold, her knees weak. She leaned against a chair, watching them work. Her uniform was stained with soup and sweat. One of the paramedics asked her what happened. She explained everything as clearly as she could. He nodded and said she did the right thing. That simple sentence made her eyes burn. The man was lifted onto a stretcher. Oxygen covered his face. As they rolled him toward the door, his eyes opened again for a brief moment. They met hers. His look was not confused now. It was full of something deeper. Gratitude, relief, maybe surprise. Then he was gone. The restaurant slowly returned to life. Customers sat back down. Some whispered. Others complained about cold food. The manager told the staff to clean up and keep working. The night was not over. The waitress washed her hands in the back sink. She stared at her reflection in the cracked mirror. Her face looked older than her years. Her eyes were tired, but there was something else there too. She could not explain it. No one praised her. No one offered help. The shift continued. When her break came, she sat alone on a crate near the back door. Her hands still shook. She wondered if the man would survive. She hoped he had family waiting somewhere. She hoped he would not die alone. She did not know who he was. She did not know that his life reached far beyond that small restaurant. She only knew that she had done what felt right. At the end of the night, she clocked out and stepped into the cold air. The city lights flickered like tired stars. She pulled her jacket tighter and began the long walk home. Behind her, the restaurant door closed. Ahead of her, life waited. And somewhere in a hospital room, a man fought for his life because one person chose to care when it mattered most. The ambulance had taken him away before the waitress could even think about what would happen next. She walked home slowly, her mind heavy. Every step felt strange, as if the world around her had shifted slightly. The city seemed quieter now, though the streets were still full of cars and people rushing to somewhere. Her body ached, her feet hurt, but her heart was not empty. She had done something important, something that might have mattered more than anything else she had ever done. She did not know his name. She did not know who he was. To her, he was just a man who had fallen in front of her eyes, helpless and in danger. Yet she could not stop thinking about him. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the moment he had collapsed. She saw the panic on his face, the sudden weakness, and the way he had looked at her before the paramedics arrived. It was a look she could not forget. Meanwhile, in the hospital, the man lay in a quiet, sterile room. Machines beeped softly, oxygen hissed, and the smell of antiseptic filled the air. His breathing was steady now, but weak. The doctors had worked quickly. They had stabilized him. His heart had been close to stopping, and his body had been fragile from long years of stress and illness. The nurse who checked on him whispered that he had been lucky, very lucky. He thought about the waitress. He had no idea who she was, but he remembered her hands, her voice, her calm presence in the middle of chaos. He expected people to panic, to freeze, to do nothing, but she had acted. She had not waited for orders, not worried about herself, not looked away. She had cared, and that had saved his life. The man was wealthy, more than most people could imagine. He had a life filled with business deals, meetings, and numbers that ran into millions. Yet none of that mattered in the moment of crisis. He realized that he had taken people for granted. Staff, strangers, even family. He had assumed the world would bend to him. But the one person who had truly mattered was a young woman who had no reason to care. He asked the hospital staff to find her. The nurses were puzzled at first. Who was she? She was not listed anywhere, had not left a name, had gone home before anyone could ask. But the doctors and administrators knew their patient. They understood the gravity. They promised they would try. Days passed. The waitress continued her life, as if nothing had happened. She went to work, took care of her small apartment, cooked meals that were simple but warm, and helped her younger siblings with homework. No one had called her. No one had thanked her. And that was okay. She did not expect it. She had only done what she felt was right. She remembered his face often. She wondered if he would survive. She prayed quietly for him, though she was not religious. It was more a hope than prayer, a hope that her actions had been enough. Every time a customer snapped at her, she remembered that day. Every time her manager criticized her, she remembered that day. Every time she felt tired or invisible, she remembered that day. And then, one afternoon, she received a message, a letter, handwritten, addressed to her. There was no return address. She opened it carefully, her fingers trembling slightly. Inside, the words were simple but powerful. The man had survived. He asked to meet her. He said that her courage and quick thinking had changed his life. He wanted to thank her in person. She could not believe it. Part of her thought it was a joke, a trick. Another part of her felt fear. What if he was angry? What if he wanted something she could not give? But the part of her that had acted that night The part that had stayed calm and focused told her to go. She could not ignore this. This could be important. When she arrived at the hospital, the room was quiet. She saw him lying on the bed, older than she had imagined, pale and fragile but awake. He looked at her with eyes full of gratitude. They were not just polite thanks. They were deep, real, and honest. He spoke slowly, his voice weak but steady. He asked her about herself, where she worked, how she managed life, what she dreamed about. He did not ask for money, fame, or anything material. He wanted to know her. He wanted to understand the person who had cared when no one else had. The waitress felt nervous. She had never spoken with someone so important, but she also felt proud. She answered honestly, telling him about her jobs, her family, the struggles she faced. She told him about the rent, the bills, the empty fridge, the small joys and sorrows. She spoke with no shame. She spoke as herself. He listened. He nodded. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said that most people in his life had never spoken like that. They had hidden behind manners, behind money, behind power. But she had been real. She had been human. The conversation lasted hours. Nurses and doctors came and went, bringing food, adjusting monitors, checking medicines. But he barely noticed them. He was focused on her, on the life she led, on the heart she showed when it had mattered most. He thought about how he had lived his life, surrounded by luxury, surrounded by people who wanted him only for what he had. He realized that all the money, all the power, had not saved him. Only her hands, her attention, her care had done that. He decided that he would find a way to repay her, but not with money, not with charity that could embarrass her or make her feel small. He wanted to help her live a better life, to have opportunities she had never dreamed of, to show her that someone believed in her. The waitress left the hospital that day with a strange mix of emotions. She felt light and heavy at the same time. She could not explain it. She felt hope, fear, pride, and uncertainty all at once. She walked home slowly, thinking about what had happened. She knew life might change, but she did not know how. At home, she told her younger siblings about the letter. They were amazed, full of questions, full of excitement. She smiled, but her mind was elsewhere. She could not stop thinking about the man, the hospital, the moment she had acted. It all felt distant and close at the same time. That night, she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. She thought about her life, her struggles, her small victories, and the one extraordinary moment that had changed everything. She did not know what the future held. She did not know if the man would truly keep his promise. She only knew that she had done what was right, and for the first time in a long time, she felt hope that things could be different. Somewhere far away, the billionaire sat in his hospital room, looking out at the city lights. He reflected on life, on kindness, and on how fragile existence could be. He had lived a life of control and calculation, but tonight he realized that control meant little. One person, acting from care and compassion, had reminded him of what truly mattered. And in that quiet moment, both their lives had shifted, though neither fully understood how. The waitress had saved a life, but that life, in turn, would soon reach back and touch hers in ways she could not yet imagine. A chain of events had begun, small and unseen, that would stretch into the future, changing both of them forever. Days had passed since the letter arrived, and the waitress still could not stop thinking about it. She tried to focus on work, on cooking simple meals, on helping her younger siblings with school, but the thought of the hospital and the man who had survived because of her actions lingered like a shadow she could not shake. She wondered what he looked like, what kind of life he led, and most of all, why someone so far removed from her world would care enough to reach out. Finally, the day came when the hospital called and asked her to come again. She felt a knot of nerves tighten in her stomach. She could hardly imagine what would happen. What would he say? Would he ask for something? Would he be angry or disappointed? The walk to the hospital seemed longer than usual, her steps slower, her mind filled with questions and fears. When she arrived, the nurse led her through quiet hallways to a small private room. The man was sitting up in bed, his face pale but showing the faintest hint of a smile. He looked at her with eyes that were now steady and alert, full of gratitude but also curiosity. She had never met anyone like this before. Even from a distance, his presence felt heavy, but not in a frightening way. It was a presence that made her feel the importance of the moment. "Thank you for coming," he said softly, his voice calm, yet carrying the weight of someone who had experienced something life-changing. He did not ask her for her name again, did not introduce himself formally. He simply wanted to speak to her, to know her, to connect in a way that did not involve power or money. She nodded and sat down on a chair nearby, trying to calm her nerves. She could feel her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the intensity of the moment. She had helped him when it mattered most, and now he wanted to know her. That thought alone made her heart race. He began by asking about her life, where she worked, how she managed her days, what her routines were like. She spoke honestly, telling him about the small apartment she shared with her siblings, about her struggles with bills, about her dreams that often felt too big for her reality. She spoke without hesitation, without trying to impress. She wanted him to see her as she was, real, ordinary, struggling, but hopeful. He listened intently. Every now and then he would nod, sometimes smile faintly, sometimes remain quiet, simply taking in her words. He asked questions about the people she cared for, about the moments that made her happy despite the hardships. He wanted to know what it felt like to live her life, to see the world through her eyes. The waitress was surprised by how deeply he seemed to care. He asked about things no one else had asked before, not about her work performance, not about her family background, not about appearances or achievements. He asked about her feelings, her worries, and her small joys. He asked about the times she felt invisible, about the moments when she wondered if anyone noticed her efforts. She shared these things hesitantly at first, then with growing confidence. She felt seen, truly seen, in a way that few people had ever done. As the conversation continued, he shared some of his own story, not about wealth or business, but about loneliness, about the pressure of always being surrounded by people who cared only for his status, about the fear of being ignored or forgotten despite having everything. He spoke honestly, with a humility that surprised her. She realized that despite his fortune, he had faced struggles no money could solve. For hours they talked. The hospital staff came and went, checking on him, delivering meals, adjusting monitors, but the room seemed to exist outside of time. They were not patient and visitor. They were two people connected by a moment that had changed both of their lives. She realized that her small act of care had opened a door, not just to saving his life, but to a conversation and a connection that neither of them could have expected. He looked at her then and said something that made her pause. "You acted without thinking about reward. You did not care who I was, only that I needed help. That is more than most people have ever done for me, and it has changed how I see the world." He paused and his eyes softened. "You had given me a gift that no money could ever buy." The words made her feel a warmth she had not known in a long time. She had acted from instinct, from a sense of right, not expecting anything in return. And now, that instinct had created a bond that could not be measured. She wanted to say something, but her voice caught in her throat. All she could do was nod, and her eyes reflected both humility and surprise. He leaned back slightly and continued, "I want to help you, not by giving you money, but by giving you opportunity, by showing you that your life can be more than the limits you see around you. I want to help you reach what you dream about, in ways that are meaningful to you." She felt a rush of emotions, hope, fear, pride, and disbelief. She had never imagined someone like him would care enough to offer anything. She had never imagined that her life, so ordinary, could intersect with his in such a profound way. But she also felt the weight of responsibility. Could she accept help? Would it change her in ways she did not want? Would it make her feel small, indebted, or uncomfortable? He seemed to sense her hesitation. "I will not force anything on you," he said gently. "I only want to offer a chance. You do not have to accept it immediately. Take your time. Decide what is right for you. But know that I believe in you." His words were simple, yet they carried power. They carried trust, respect, and encouragement. For the first time in a long while, she felt that someone believed in her abilities, her heart, and her potential. She felt seen not just for what she could do for others, but for who she was as a person. They continued to talk about everyday things too, books, movies, the city outside the hospital window, small events that seemed insignificant, but now held weight because they were shared. She laughed quietly at some of his stories, smiled at his observations, and felt a sense of normalcy she had rarely experienced. He listened as carefully as he spoke, creating a space where she felt valued and respected. By the end of the visit, hours had passed without either of them noticing. The sun outside had shifted, the hallway outside had grown quieter, and the hospital staff began gently reminding them that it was time to rest. The man looked at her with gratitude once more. "I cannot say enough how thankful I am. You saved my life, and now I hope I can help you. But above all, I am grateful to know you." She left the hospital that day feeling a mix of emotions. Her heart was lighter than before, yet full. She had come expecting uncertainty and fear, but she left with hope and a sense of possibility. She understood now that life could shift in moments, that small acts could create ripples far beyond what one could see. As she walked back home, the streets felt different. The lights seemed warmer. The people moving past her seemed more vivid. She carried with her the memory of the conversation, the weight of being seen, and the spark of opportunity that had been offered. She did not know what the future held, but she knew that her life, no matter how ordinary it seemed, had value and meaning. And somewhere in that hospital room, the man reflected on the meeting as well. He realized that one moment of care, one decision to act without hesitation, had not only saved his life, but had created a connection that would alter his understanding of kindness, trust, and human connection forever. Both their lives had changed in ways neither could fully predict, and both knew that the path ahead would be shaped by this unexpected, extraordinary meeting. After the unexpected meeting at the hospital, the waitress returned to her normal life, but nothing felt the same. Her small apartment seemed brighter somehow, even though the furniture and walls had not changed. Her routine at work continued, serving tables, pouring drinks, and balancing trays. But now there was a spark inside her, a quiet hope that something better could happen. She could not stop thinking about the man, about his words, and about the promise of opportunity he had offered. Days turned into weeks. She received occasional calls from the hospital, updates about his health, and gentle reminders to take care of herself. At first, she hesitated to engage, unsure if she was ready to accept the changes that might come. She worried about losing her independence or appearing weak. Yet each call, each message, felt like a thread being pulled, drawing her toward a future she had only imagined in fleeting dreams. Finally, the day arrived when she was invited to meet him again, this time at his office. The building was tall, glass walls reflecting sunlight, buzzing with the quiet hum of organized activity. She felt nervous as she rode the elevator to the top floor. Her hands gripped her bag tightly. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself that she was here because of who she was, not what she owned. When she entered his office, he stood up to greet her. His face was healthier now, his smile genuine. He did not talk about money or wealth, only about possibilities, skills, and choices. He wanted to understand what she cared about, what she enjoyed, and what she had always dreamed of doing if circumstances were different. His questions were thoughtful, never probing in an uncomfortable way. He listened patiently, nodding, and occasionally offering insights from his own experiences. She shared her interests, the work she loved doing but could not pursue, and the small ambitions she had tucked away, thinking they were impossible. She spoke about books she had wanted to read more seriously, about skills she wanted to develop, about ways she wanted to help others but had felt blocked by time and money. He listened carefully, making notes, not in a businesslike way, but with genuine interest. He suggested ways to support her growth without taking control of her life. He offered to fund courses, workshops, and mentorship opportunities that aligned with her dreams. He emphasized that it was not charity, but an investment in her abilities, her heart, and her future. He wanted her to believe in herself, to see the possibilities that she had been too cautious to imagine. The offer was practical, structured, and respectful. He asked her to consider what she wanted most and assured her that any choice she made would be honored. The waitress hesitated at first. She had always worked hard for every penny she earned, balancing multiple jobs, caring for her siblings, and keeping life moving despite the obstacles. Accepting help from someone so powerful felt strange and foreign. She worried about appearances, about pride, and about what people would think. But she also realized that this was an opportunity to grow, to pursue dreams she had long abandoned, and to create a better life not just for herself but for her family as well. Over the following weeks, they met several times. Each meeting built trust. He connected her with experts who could guide her, provided access to resources she had never known existed, and encouraged her to explore new skills. He did not dictate or control. He offered support and guidance, allowing her to take ownership of her journey. He reminded her that mistakes were part of learning, and that fear should not stop her from trying. With every step, her confidence grew. She started small, attending workshops and learning new skills. She began to see her potential not just as a worker, but as a person capable of growth, creativity, and leadership. She found joy in progress, pride in achievement, and the courage to dream beyond immediate survival. The little victories, whether mastering a new skill or completing a challenging task, gave her a sense of accomplishment she had never experienced before. Meanwhile, the billionaire found purpose in the process as well. He had lived most of his life driven by wealth, business, and results. But helping her, watching her grow, and witnessing the impact of encouragement and guidance brought fulfillment he had never known. He realized that true influence was not measured in money or power, but in the lives one could touch through care, mentorship, and trust. As the weeks turned into months, the waitress started applying her new knowledge and skills in practical ways. She began organizing small projects at her workplace, offering ideas and taking initiative. Her colleagues noticed her growing confidence, and her manager, though still strict, started to respect her dedication and insight. Her family, too, noticed a change. She shared her experiences, encouraged her siblings, and slowly became a source of inspiration at home. The transformation was gradual but steady. She felt empowered, not because someone had given her a handout, but because she was now equipped with tools, knowledge, and belief in herself. Each day felt like a small victory, a step toward a life she had once only dreamed about. She began to understand that the act of helping her had not just been about saving a life, but creating one. And that realization brought humility and gratitude. One evening, after a long day of learning and applying her new skills, she sat quietly in her small apartment. She reflected on the journey so far. She had been a waitress, struggling and overlooked, and now she had opportunities she had never imagined. The billionaire had offered guidance, but it was her determination, hard work, and courage that were shaping the path ahead. She realized that life could be altered not by luck alone, but by moments of bravery, kindness, and connection. She smiled quietly, thinking about how far she had come. Her journey was not over, and challenges remained, but she no longer felt trapped by circumstances. She had learned that help could come without strings attached, that trust could be earned and given, and that her actions, no matter how small, could have far-reaching effects. The billionaire, in turn, continued to reflect on the encounter. He understood that his fortune had given him the ability to provide resources, but it was her courage, her empathy, and her humanity that had changed him more than he had expected. By choosing to act selflessly, she had reminded him of what mattered most: connection, compassion, and belief in others. Both their lives were intertwined now, not by money, but by respect, gratitude, and shared humanity. In this way, the chance encounter that began on a quiet night in a small restaurant had grown into a meaningful journey. One small act of bravery had created a ripple effect, leading to growth, opportunity, and transformation. The waitress had stepped forward when it mattered most, and the billionaire had responded with patience, guidance, and support, creating a bridge between two worlds that might never have crossed otherwise. The story was far from over. Both knew that challenges would arise, that life would test them in new ways. But the foundation had been laid. Trust, respect, and mutual care had taken root. And with them, the possibility of change, growth, and fulfillment in ways neither had imagined before. And so, they continued forward, both shaped and inspired by the extraordinary events that had begun with a single courageous act of kindness. Months had passed since the first encounter at the hospital. The waitress had worked tirelessly, not just at her old jobs, but now on projects and learning opportunities that had opened doors she had never imagined. She had gained skills, confidence, and the ability to see life differently. Each day felt purposeful, each small victory building on the last. She still worked hard, still cooked simple meals, and still cared deeply for her siblings. But now she had hope, a sense of direction, and the knowledge that her actions could have meaningful results. The billionaire watched from his world, quietly observing the changes. He had been amazed at her determination and resilience. His intention had been to offer support, but he realized that her own effort, humility, and courage were what had truly transformed her. He felt a deep respect for the young woman who had saved his life and now, without seeking praise, had reshaped her own future. One afternoon, he called her to meet him again. She walked into his office building, her steps calm, her heart steady. She had learned to approach opportunities with patience and thoughtfulness. When she entered the office, he rose to greet her with a smile that conveyed gratitude, admiration, and sincerity. They exchanged greetings, and the conversation began naturally, as it always had, focusing on growth, progress, and potential. He asked about her projects, the skills she had mastered, and the challenges she had faced along the way. She spoke openly, sharing both her achievements and the moments she had struggled. He listened intently, offering advice when needed, encouragement when doubt arose, and occasionally sharing a story from his own experiences that could guide her without imposing his will. They spoke about the impact she wanted to make in the world, not just for herself, but for others. She shared her dreams of helping people in situations similar to her own, of creating opportunities for those overlooked or underappreciated. He nodded, impressed by her empathy and vision. It reminded him that success was not only measured by wealth or status, but by the lives one touched and the positive change one could inspire. As the conversation progressed, he expressed something he had been thinking about for a long time. "You saved me when I needed it most," he said gently. "I cannot thank you enough for that. But now I want you to know that your courage, kindness, and hard work have inspired me. You have reminded me of the importance of seeing people, understanding them, and helping without expecting anything in return. That is a gift more valuable than anything money can buy." Her eyes filled slightly with tears, but she held back. She had learned to process emotions carefully, yet the gratitude, respect, and acknowledgement from someone she had once only seen in crisis felt overwhelming. She nodded quietly, understanding the depth of his words, and silently thanked him for believing in her. Over the next months, she continued to grow. She took on large responsibilities, honed her skills, and applied her knowledge in real-world situations. She started mentoring younger colleagues, and even helped organize community initiatives to support people in need. Her life had transformed from mere survival to one of purpose and direction. She had a vision for her future, and each day, she worked toward it with determination. The billionaire, meanwhile, had begun to reflect on the lessons she had unknowingly taught him. He realized that wealth alone could never provide fulfillment, but the act of giving, guiding, and encouraging someone with true intent could bring more meaning than any transaction, deal, or acquisition. He found joy in seeing her succeed and knowing that her life had changed because of her courage and his support. The relationship between them remained grounded in respect and mutual care. She did not owe him anything, nor did he demand recognition. They met occasionally, discussed her progress, and shared insights about life, work, and growth. Their bond had evolved into something rare, an authentic connection founded on mutual trust, understanding, and appreciation for the human spirit. One day, they decided to look beyond their individual paths. They began working on a small project together, creating opportunities for others who had been overlooked or marginalized. She contributed ideas, led initiatives, and engaged with people in meaningful ways. He provided resources, networks, and guidance. Together, they realized that the ripple effect of one small act of courage, her saving his life, had grown into something much larger, touching lives beyond their own. The waitress had changed profoundly. She still remembered the fear, uncertainty, and exhaustion she felt that night at the restaurant, but she no longer felt trapped by it. She had learned that even ordinary people, acting in small ways, could have extraordinary effects. She had grown into someone capable, confident, and compassionate, empowered to influence not only her life, but the lives of many others. The billionaire, too, had changed. He had learned humility, the value of genuine human connection, and the importance of recognizing and nurturing talent and courage in others. The experience had reminded him of what truly mattered: people, empathy, and shared purpose. He had gained more than he had given, not in wealth or recognition, but in wisdom, gratitude, and a renewed understanding of life. Their story became a quiet legend, known in the circles they moved in, and inspiring those who heard it. A single courageous act had bridged worlds, transformed lives, and created a lasting bond between two very different people. It was a reminder that kindness, courage, and authenticity could create ripples far beyond the initial moment, changing the course of many lives in ways that money, power, or status never could. As time passed, the waitress established a life she could be proud of. She maintained her humility, her hard work, and her compassion. She never forgot where she had come from or the night that changed everything. She carried gratitude in her heart, not just for the billionaire's support, but for the chance to realize her own potential. She had become the person she was always capable of being, guided by courage, perseverance, and the knowledge that one act of kindness could echo across a lifetime. The billionaire continued to support others quietly, inspired by her example. He invested in projects, initiatives, and people who needed a hand or a chance, understanding that true change comes from empowering others rather than controlling them. He knew that the life he had saved was not just his own. It had become a life of impact, a life that would create opportunities, hope, and inspiration for many. In the end, both their lives were forever changed. The waitress had gained confidence, purpose, and opportunity, and the billionaire had rediscovered the importance of humanity, empathy, and meaningful connection. They had begun as strangers in a crisis, but had grown into partners in a journey that extended beyond themselves. A moment of courage had become a lifetime of transformation, proving that small actions, when guided by care and intention, can alter destinies in ways no one can predict. Their story remained a testament to the power of kindness, resilience, and the extraordinary impact one person can have on another's life.